Hello everyone. So it's that time of year where most A-level students around the country will be thinking about the next steps, and I thought I would put together a presentation for those of you who are interested in studying law at university and are aware that you need to complete an additional admissions test in law. So there are a number of requirements. If you're applying to Oxford or Cambridge, obviously you need to submit your UCAS application earlier than the January deadline. It falls in October. But also you may be required to complete a test. And I've put here CLT, that would be the Cambridge Law Test. So there is some preparation that you can do for that. And it falls very similarly to the preparation that you would need to do for the Law National Admissions Test, the LNAT. So this test is a requirement of 11 universities, and if you visit the website lnat.ac.uk, then you'll find the list of universities. So please do check when you're making your university choice and make sure you're aware whether you need to sit the LNAT or not. And the preparation for both, as I say, is very similar. So what I thought I'd do is put together a session to help you to prepare. So the session I will structure in 4 parts. So we'll look at the format of tests first, and I will focus more on the LNAT because the Cambridge Law Test, it really tends to be an essay, and it's an hour long, whereas the LNAT also has an additional multiple choice section of multiple choice questions. We'll look at the essay format, so I'll propose a structure for you to plan for and prepare for. Then we'll look at areas to consider that could come up as essay questions. And in doing that, we'll look more closely at current affairs and topical issues. Now, I'm recording this in 2021, so the current affairs and topical issues that I will be going through now may not be as relevant next year. So it's just worth kind of being aware of that. And when you get to that stage, thinking about what the current affairs and issues are presently. And you can do that by doing your own research and doing some reading. So I'll talk to you about that in a little while. So the format, in particular of the LNAT, it's 2 hours and 15 minutes in total. And there are 2 sections to answer questions. Okay, so it's a timed test. You need to register through the LNAT website to sit the test, and it's a £50 fee to do so. So typically around the country, these tests are held at driving test centres, but it may vary where you live. In the local area to us, there are several test centres that offer this test. Some schools may offer the opportunity to sit the test at the school. At my school, we don't. So the test is 2 hours, 15 minutes in total. So section A is your multiple choice questions section. And you have 42 questions to answer based on information that you need to digest. So you're given 12 passages of information. Obviously, you read one and then answer the questions relating to that passage and then move on to the next one. And you'll have 3 or 4 questions on each passage. The point of this, and any of you that have sat multiple choice tests before will know that they're not that easy. Often you have similar answers that you have to choose between. And the point of the questions is to test your understanding of the passage of information and distinguish between fact and assumption. So it may ask you whether something is specifically said in the passage. You really need to read the passages carefully, okay? The timing I worked out is approximately 8 minutes per passage. So you don't have that long, and I recommend that you practice as much as you can. So there are 2 practice papers on the LNAT website. They are old. Hopefully they will update them at some point. But on the lawyerportal.com, there are also more practice papers. So you could have a look at that. Section B is the essay section, and it gives you a choice of 3 essays. So you choose one essay and you have 40 minutes to plan and write. Okay, and it's recommended you spend between 10 and 15 minutes planning. And I'll show you how to plan and to do that. So I think a common misconception about the LNAT is that you need to have a background in law or understanding of law to sit it, but actually, because not every centre offers A-level law, it's not a requirement. And the reason why the test is given is because admissions tutors want to assess your ability to critically think and your ability to digest information. And as I said before, pick out the difference between fact and opinion. So really, what is critical thinking and reading? It's about thinking objectively. That's a key skill of a lawyer, removing emotion and personal opinion until you have gathered and considered the facts. It's the ability to distinguish opinion from fact and fake news from real news, which of course we have to do every day. So you need to understand the links between ideas, determining the importance and relevance of arguments and ideas. You need to be able to show that you can build arguments through the essay question, identify inconsistencies, weaknesses, or errors in your reasoning. So you should always be able to give a counter argument in response to a viewpoint. You need to show that you can approach problems and debates in a structured way, and through planning for an essay, you'll be able to do that, and then reflect and conclude on your reasoning with justification. And any of you who have written an essay and concluded will know that that's a key skill there. Okay, the process of critical thinking is really about assessing how reliable the source is. And there's just some key kind of questions, and this hopefully would help you when you're practicing your multiple choice question section and when you're sitting the real thing. Think about who said the piece of information, how reliable is that source, and what is their position? What did they say? Did they give fact or opinion? Did they leave anything out that you would want to know? Where did they say it? Was it in public or private? Was there open debate? Did anybody provide an alternative view? When did they say it? Was it before, during, or after an important event? Is timing important? Why did they say it? Did they give reasoning? What was the intention in saying something? And how did they say it? What was the emotion behind it? Did they write or verbally say it? Could you understand what was being said? And a way to kind of test these skills might be just to pick a news article up, or when you're listening to the news, and think about these questions, getting to the habit of critically analysing what people tell you and questioning the validity and the reliability of those sources. The earlier you can do that, the better. Okay, practically, registration has already opened for LNAT as I am recording this. So registration opens in August time. So start reading the guides and the information on websites. So really, I would advise that you book your tests in September. They can get full up. I see that in recent years, more people sitting the LNAT. I'm not sure how many more spaces they're using to accommodate those additional students. So first come, first serve. You may find you need to travel further if you book it later. I would always recommend you book and leave at least 3 weeks between booking and sitting, and then you can really get some intensive preparation. But ideally, critical thinking and keeping up to date with current affairs needs to start much earlier to have that well-rounded view and opinions and knowledge on different areas. If you're submitting your UCAS application by the 15th of October or mid-October, when the Oxbridge deadlines are, then you need to sit your LNAT before then. And if you're applying to Oxford or Cambridge, then the law tests as required will usually sit in November. Now, you will receive a mark back for your multiple choice questions, but you will not receive marks or grades back for your essay. But the essays are sent to the universities along with your marks for the multiple choice. So it is possible that you could ask the university or universities you're applying to for feedback, but you will not receive a grade for that. Okay, so essay format, and I'm focusing on the essay because this is arguably the part that gives students more worry and more anxiety. The multiple choice is a difficult part, but practice the questions that are available online. Essays, I would argue, need more preparation, okay? So the format is as follows, and I would write this down so that you've got the plan. So introduce the topic first. What does the question mean? If you can, obviously you need to pick the question that you feel more confident in, but you need to define or explain any concepts and key words within the question, and also set out initially what your view is. So what do you want to conclude? And then you need to provide more arguments in support of your view, first of all. So I've said aim to provide 3 arguments. Let's aim for that in support of your view. If you can, if you feel confident with the topical area, then try and back up with factual information. So things you've read, statistics, studies, or cases or laws. You need to provide at least one counter argument. Otherwise, it's not a critical evaluation. So you could say something like, however, it could be argued, or it is worth noting that, and then give your counterpoint. But in conclusion, nevertheless, I believe that, and then you fully set out your conclusion and just summarise the arguments you said earlier that were in support of your view. So in summary or in conclusion, I believe that, and then you conclude because X, Y, Z. Okay, so if you aim to stick to this format, you can't go far wrong. So in terms of the essay focus, there are essentially 6 areas that you can plan for by reading around. So you've got law. So if you're studying law already, you're at an advantage. And I would suggest that you read around the theory of law. So any jurisprudence books you can get hold of, or just reading up on the relationship between law and morals. Does law achieve justice? The relationship between law and society. These things will give you a real head start. Politics, if you're interested in politics, any political issues, then you need to make sure that you're reading up on those. Science, media, philosophy and ethics, which philosophy and ethics will link to the theory of law. As I said, loosely, there may be some moral dilemma type questions. So that would be a good one to look at. And education. So I put some reading suggestions there, things that you can read, some websites, but also some news articles. So just be careful with the sources that you're looking at online. Make sure that they are valid, and try to gain or grasp an unbiased view of the issue. You may need to look at one or more sources, okay? So again, when you're reading, read critically. How valid is the source? Is it fact or opinion? Is an alternative view provided, or is it left out? Do you agree with the view, or do you need to know more? Okay, so we're going to look at these areas. What I've done is I've put each area on its own slide, and I've just made a list of some of the key issues that I believe could come up, okay? And then we'll focus on some more current issues. So what I would suggest is, in terms of your preparation, pick a topic every other day and do an essay plan for that topic. The more you can prepare for, and give yourself 15 minutes to plan each of these areas, the more you do that, the better you'll get and the more understanding you'll have. You know, if you've come across, say, the media topics and you think, I don't know as much about this area, then you can spend some time, an hour to 2 hours reading around it. So that's what my advice would be. Put yourself a plan together prior to sitting the tests, and make sure that you're doing essay plans around these areas every other day. Okay, so law, naturally, there are probably the most areas for law, and being a law teacher, I could naturally think of more. So if I start at the top, you've got the role of the judiciary. So you could be asked questions about the judiciary. Should they have the freedom to enforce different sentences, for example? Thinking about their role of decision making. Should they be able to make a decision that overrides the interests of the parents or differs to Parliament? So it's about thinking about the role of the judiciary and how that sits in society. Ultimately, the role of the judiciary is to protect people, protect the public, and to enforce the law as set mainly by Parliament. And similarly, the role of the police. We know the role of the police has come to the forefront in recent years, so it wouldn't be out of the realms of question that the police may come up as an essay question. Should there be more limits on their powers? Obviously, we had the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984 brought in that significantly limited their power, gave individuals suspect rights, but did create, or shall I say, confirm powers as well. The right to arrest before, during, or after an offence has been committed. So the fact that you can arrest somebody before an offence has been committed is a big thing. It's a big thing in detecting crime. The right to stop and search people if you have reasonable suspicion that they are carrying prohibited articles or stolen goods or drugs. So it's worth having a think about that. The role of the jury. Is it fair? Obviously, jury selection has widened in recent years. Since 2003, you can now be called as a jury member if you're a judge or if you're a lawyer, if you're a police officer. Is that fair? Issues of selection in high-profile cases. Can we ever be sure that jurors are unbiased? They decide in secret, so we will never know how they reach a decision unless it's leaked to the press, of course. The role of the courts in current affairs. Should they still be pursuing lockdown breaches? Some people may say yes, some people may think no. Certainly now that the rules are becoming more lenient. The role of the courts in sacrificing liberties of people. So again, this could be in terms of an individual. Should everybody be sentenced to prison? Does prison work? Or could this be sacrificing the freedom of people to make decisions for their loved ones? Euthanasia, assisted suicide. Does the law provide accessibility to all? So we know, if you've been studying law, or if you work in law, you'll know that funding has significantly changed over the last 10 to 15 years, and there is a distinct lack of funding, certainly in the civil arena, less funding available to those who need it and need representation. And perhaps a bit of a wider question that could link quite nicely with some theory kind of understanding. Does the current system achieve justice? Does it set out to achieve what it's meant to? Does it protect individuals? Okay, so lots to think about, and you could pick a couple of these, or you could work your way through them and think about plans. And literally, I'll show you, because I have planned a couple of more what I feel current affair issues, and I'll show you and see what you can think about maybe adopting my structure. Okay, science. And look, if you can think about any more issues, and that's brilliant, you could make mind maps for each of the 6 areas, and you can add more issues. You can add more potential essay areas. So a couple that I thought about, maybe something about the decline in plant and animal species. Obviously, it's a concern. And the same with climate change. There are several debates that are out there: electric cars versus fuel, Obviously, electric cars are being considered as more environmentally friendly, but there is the issue around the battery disposal and the use of creating new batteries. There won't be an everlasting supply. Recycling as well, to what extent is that effective? Vaccines, which is of course a real current issue, the safety, age, should they be compulsory? And it could be that you get something to the relevant current COVID vaccination program, and the fact that the ages are becoming younger. There are a number of different vaccines out there. Should they be compulsory? I'm speaking as the government have just decided not to enforce vaccine passports for events, activities in the UK, but that could change. Another recent thing, human beings in space. We know that Richard Branson, is keen for us to go to space. Should we be doing that? Should we allow members, Joe Public to go into space? And then there are the age-old debates that surround scientific, but also maybe moral issues as well. Abortion, the time limit on abortion, the availability of abortion, IVF. Obviously, that's an artificial treatment to enable people to bear children, and other treatments as well, preserving life or assisting people to die. And we know that Parliament currently cannot quite decide on whether to fully legalise euthanasia. The courts have, over the last 12 years, taken more of a lenient approach, and very rarely are people prosecuted now if they have genuinely assisted a terminally ill loved one to die. But nevertheless, it's still illegal. So these are some areas that you might want to look at. Okay, the media, big role the media plays in society nowadays, and to what extent is that role a positive one? So a couple of questions really for you to think about: the role of social media, the impact it has on society. What are the pros and the cons? Which one is outweighed? Has the media become too powerful? At one time, it was there to facilitate information for the public, and now it is a real big business. It's a powerful business, and many people earn a lot of money through a role in the public eye. Of course, we have the kind of creation of a new celebrity through social media as well. To what extent is that a positive influence on society? The impact of biased media. Do we always know what we're reading and what we're watching is true and valid? The media can be influenced politically, culturally. So there are several campaigns and movements, moments of activism that have been reported in the media in different ways. Something that is current at the moment, the proposals to reduce press freedoms in reporting government secrets. There might be a proposal to prosecute the press if they release a government secret. So I wonder what you think about that. And I've actually done a little plan for that, so I'll show you that in a bit. Okay, education, something else that I could probably think and talk a lot more about. Couple of kind of issues here. So technology in schools, particularly in light of the recent lockdown and remote learning that we've all been, in education, we've all had to adapt to. How important is it? How varied was the provision? Do we think that people were disadvantaged by it? Particularly in relation to, gender or class gaps. Are there still those gaps? And is there generally a gender gap, do we think, in education? University, increase in admissions. We have now nationally the largest numbers of students going to university. Is that the right thing? It would be interesting to look up some statistics on this. How many stay? How many go on to earn more money? and secure those graduate jobs, those higher paid jobs than those who maybe choose to do an apprenticeship or choose to go into employment and work their way up? What about the decline in people doing the jobs that we need, the more manual jobs, the labour jobs? And in turn, has that impacted or influenced a decline in creative courses available? There's also the ongoing debate about tuition fees. Should they be free? Should they be still paid for? Should they be as much as they are? And then we had a more recent issue, teachers' grades versus externally moderated grades. I could see, an essay question that asks, should we replace external grades with teacher grades? Could be arguments for and against. As a teacher, I think I'd rather stick with externally moderated grades personally. But I could probably argue against that as well, Uniform, always a big debate. Should we enforce school uniform or not? Punishment, do we get the right level of punishment now or not? Should it be less or more? Okay, politics. So some of the issues here. So immigration, always a topical issue. Is it necessary? And when we're thinking about the recent refugee crisis, the Afghan crisis, have we done enough? A question could be, should we have a refugee programme? Should we provide asylum to those seeking refuge from Afghanistan or other countries? Or should it be limited to neighbouring countries? So you can see a potential question there. Obviously, our political system is largely based around democracy, general election. Should we require people to vote? Should it stay the same? What is political correctness? Does it matter? Did the government do enough to support businesses through the pandemic? Could they have done more? Did they do too much? The impact of trading and, of course, Brexit. I think it's probably less likely that Brexit would come up this year, but I don't write the tests, so I don't know. But of course, we are now starting to branch out and trade with further countries further afield. So what's the impact of that? Some of those are quite specific, but you get the mind thinking. And the final area, philosophy and ethics. So moral dilemmas could be anything. Something I tend to ask in law. You see, you're walking along by the local river, you see somebody drowning. Should you save them? And the question could be a legal one. Do you have a duty to save them? Morally, should you save them? I think probably most people would morally say yes, but legally, do you have a duty? 9 times out of 10, no. So it's an interesting question to think about. The extent to which justice is achieved, and that kind of ties in with law, as we spoke about earlier. The pros and cons of a multicultural society. This is a question that I mentioned to you before that could link with politics. Should we provide refuge? Maybe not just generally to those fleeing, but to, a general refugee programme. Not all countries offer that, so it's worth looking into that a bit more. Should the law apply equally to everyone? The rule of law, should it apply to everybody? Theorists say it should. Nobody should be above the law. Doesn't always work out that way though, does it? Other potential questions, should private cars or other items or things be rationed? Okay, so I hope that's helped you. What I'll do now is just take you through some of my essay plans. And of course, you can come back and look at these, pause, write them down. But I think it will hopefully give you some more guidance to practice your own. And just at the end of the day, an essay is largely based on your opinion. And really what these universities are looking for is for you to structure your opinion and give two sides. and it be clear which side you're sitting on. So as long as you get those things right, if you don't know a lot about the content, I think planning is important because you can really sit and think about it. Please don't rush into writing and think that that's what you need to do straight away. This is about planning, being methodical, showing the true skills and qualities of a lawyer. No good lawyer will rush into something. They will think and process. Okay, so don't be rushed because it's a time pressured assessment. Spend time planning. And I know every teacher says that about exams, but this is absolutely true. So I'll take you through some plans now. Okay, so a couple of questions that I just kind of posed that I thought were more current. So the role of social media has a positive influence on society today. To what extent do you agree? So I think you could probably see here that, and again, I stress this is, my thinking. I have had help. I have spoken to people and tried to gain opinions from others, but ultimately it's an opinion-based thing unless you are a person full of statistics and valid sources, which would be fantastic. So what I'm naturally reaching or leading towards in this essay is that it doesn't have a positive influence, because you can see the answers for no are more than the answers for yes. Okay. To gain kind of more credibility, you need to justify, you need to explain your reasoning. So of course I've just made bullet point notes here, but I would expect you to write short paragraphs with your reasoning, explaining them. Okay, so don't just bullet point essays. Make sure you put them into full sentences and explain what you mean. So I'd start out by just explaining a bit about social media. Now I've got this definition from Google, but of course you're not going to have Google there. So you just explain it in your own words, and that would be fine. So I said the pros for social media having a positive influence would be provides a platform for raising awareness of causes like charities, injustices, etc. Allows accessibility to others, so friendships, wider networks, create jobs, revolutionise services. Those are my kind of positives. And you may think of more, which is absolutely fine. Okay, this is a subjective thing, if you like. My cons would be perhaps provides everybody with a public platform to voice an opinion, which can be harmful and may be influential in the wrong way. Increases ability to commit offences, could exploit vulnerable and isolated people, provides an echo chamber effect. So what we naturally do, we may follow people, for example, or look at particular websites where the reporting is echoing what our beliefs are, if you like. We very much like a justification to our views. But what the algorithms of the internet do is that they pick that up and then they will keep showing you similar material, you see. So it's what we call the echo chamber. Your views will always be reinforced by the content that you visit. More content will be showed in that same way. Okay, so is that a positive thing? I would say probably not. Of course, it allows the spread of false news. The arrest of somebody, whether guilty or not, of course, at that point they're legally not, will be in the media, that night. And it can ruin people's lives. Okay, so I would obviously put these into paragraphs and then I would reach a conclusion, obviously, in my view, believing that the role of social media has more of a negative influence than a positive influence. Okay, but somebody else may conclude opposite and be able to justify that. Okay, let's have a look at some others. And this is again media. So this is a current one. To what extent do you agree that the freedom of the media should be restricted and those who publish government secrets should be prosecuted? So I've again explained media, and it is already an offence for those working in the government to breach official secrets. There's a number of official secrets acts, but should we extend that to the media? So if you look here, I have more reasons for yes than no. So naturally, I would be thinking or concluding that yes, there should be. Somebody else may have a different view. So government secret may be necessary. Integrity is required. Should the media have the right to report before anybody else? Could bring injustice to individuals. Bias or toxicity may impact the validity. Context of the decision may not be known. But then on the other hand, the role of the press is arguably to hold people to account. And that has, always been their role. Perhaps it's changing more into more of a business, but ultimately we do need the media to keep a check on these institutions and report and let the public know about these things. So, I can provide that balanced argument, but I'm leaning more towards one way, as you'll see. And this is what a plan does, you see. In black and white, it makes it very clear which way you are leaning. Okay, judges should be given no discretion on sentencing criminals. All criminal penalties should be fixed by statute. To what extent do you agree? So again, just to open, I'm saying what judges are, in my opinion, what a sentence is, and what statute is. Clearly, I'm saying no. So I'm saying if they had no discretion, then it would remove the ability to weigh aggravating, mitigating features. No two cases are the same, so we need to make sure that we can be flexible with our sentencing. This could potentially create injustice for individuals, removes the need for representation maybe, and we may not recognise individual hardship or circumstances in the same way if our hands are tied by Parliament. The role of the judiciary is to protect society. Strict policy may prevent this. We may want to sentence someone to a greater sentence and be unable to do so. Prevents sentencing from being able to adapt with events in society. I remember the riots in London and other cities and places, 10 years ago. Judges were given overnight the ability to sentence people harsher sentencing. The sentencing guidelines went out of the window to try and obviously act as a deterrent, reduce further crime. Even people that were inciting riots through social media were sent to prison in many parts of the country. So, that adaptation, that flexibility may be removed if we're fixed by law. We know with our legal system, very rarely are we fixed by statute. Judges play a huge role, not just enforcing law, but also creating law in the higher courts in response to appeals. But the reasons why this may be a good idea, I've put, may remove inconsistencies in sentencing, less subjectivity of the judge or magistrates, removes bias or effect of having a particularly persuasive lawyer, because you can have the lawyers that may argue more mitigation and public find it more difficult to understand. It makes them angry, makes the victim and the victim's families angry. But it may reduce appeals. So if you're clear on what the sentence will be, there's less avenue of appeal. Okay, so clearly you can see where the essay plan is going and where the conclusion would need to be. Okay, this is a moral dilemma type essay. Do we owe greater moral duties to our family and friends than we owe to all other people in the world? This is an interesting one, and it looks like I'm kind of balanced here, which I didn't really want to. I want to try and give you, a clear viewpoint. The point of the question, and this is very important, make sure you read the question, because it is, do we owe greater moral duties to our family and friends than we owe to others? This isn't about, do we only owe a moral duty to our family and friends and not to others? So the view for me, which I am kind of leaning more towards, yes, we naturally owe greater moral duties to those closest to us. It doesn't mean we don't owe a moral duty to others. So, I've put some reasonings in support. We have a greater influence over those closer to us and influenced by them. Do we owe more to them? through the support. But is there an innate natural desire to protect those around us? We can still contribute to society, yet put our friends and family first. And if everybody lived by this, would we cover the majority of society? However, you could argue we all have a common purpose, and to be an effective society, should we not all share that responsibility equally? If we are supporting others indirectly, is that not arguably for our own gain in the end? You know, we pay taxes to enable us to utilise central services, but to avoid increases in other things that could affect us in the longer terms. And that's quite a difficult point to make, actually. And also, does it go against natural instincts that could never be enforced? Okay. It's a difficult one that could be argued either way, couldn't it? Do the benefits of vaccination of public health justify overriding individual liberty and autonomy? So I've got a definition of vaccination online, but of course you could give your own, explanation of what you believe a vaccine is, maybe what individual liberty is and autonomy. And you see here, the essay plan here leads more towards, yes, the benefits override. So I've said a couple of things. So it gives the best scientific chance of killing or containing a virus. So historically, tuberculosis, smallpox, influenza, etc. have all been, thankfully, we are very rarely at risk. Things like tuberculosis and smallpox, very, very rarely, minimal risk to these once really life-threatening viruses. Reduces socioeconomic impact, benefiting greater society. So if we're vaccinated, we can go to work. And of course, this is a very topical issue, isn't it? And I think it could very well be a question in 2021. It really could. How much does vaccination go to actually affect our liberty and autonomy further than those measures that we already have upon us? So we all have to have licenses and passports, and we know there's CCTV monitoring. I remember in the 90s when CCTV was a real thing. Cameras were going up everywhere in the ANPR to check your license plates, and people were up in arms. But society has adapted by and large to these things, and actually they're very effective in detecting crime. Many people are detected, missing people are found through the use of these measures. And as a society, we tend to adapt to these things. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. Of course, our internet usage is monitored. Our cookies are stored, and our data is stored unless we opt out. And people should be opting out where they can, but how many do? Information is stored by third parties and companies. But of course, it's important not to go too off topic in an essay. Arguably, risks of vaccine side effects outweigh more serious virus effects. Of course, it depends on the circumstances. Note that this question is not specifically about the COVID vaccination, okay? And that's the important thing to note here. This is about vaccination overall. Of course, you can talk about COVID and make this more relevant, but don't go off on a tangent. Vaccines, before they are brought to the wider public, are approved by the World Health Organization. And of course, there will be risks of side effects, especially more for some than others. And of course, the media will report those. And of course, the long-term effects of a new vaccine are unknown. So that could, arguably that should be up to choice. Is there financial gain to promote vaccination? The power of the media to influence? What is the truth? Do we know the truth? And some viruses can still be caught. We know with COVID you can still catch the virus. The vaccine is intended to minimise the effects. Okay, so you can see where this essay plan is going and where the person writing it would conclude if they felt those points were valid for them. Okay, so those were my plans. I hope you found them useful. I just put here a screenshot of a previous practice paper and some different questions that you could have a look at. Some of these not so current now, as in this year, but it's still worth having a look at them and testing yourselves, planning. So I hope you found this useful, and if you have any questions, post them in the comments. Okay, thank you very much.